Elevate TV, advancing kingdom lifestyle.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Gigi Report. Glad you're tuned in. Remember to share. We are live on Facebook, Elevate TV Kenya. We are live on YouTube, Elevate TV Kenya. Please share and welcome. This is another of wonderful, exciting show. Today I have some exciting guests here, and I believe you're going to learn, and so welcome. So our topic today, we want to look at an interesting subject. This is in the business arena, opportunities in property development. I have a special guest today that is going to help us discuss this subject, how to make some money in the property arena, property development. And so this is my guest is Mr. Michael Waroe. Karibu, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Pastor Gigi.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you too, and welcome to my home.
Very nice. So, ladies and gentlemen, we decided to come straight, to Mr. Waroe's home. So we are just relaxing here and sipping some nice water, and then we're going to have a very solid conversation. So, just to give you a background, Kenya's annual housing demand stands at 250,000 units, compared to an annual supply of about 50,000 units. So that's a shortfall of about 200,000 units. And that has accumulated over the years. So the shortfall is very, very huge. Now, with over 3.2 million Kenyan families living in rented premises across the country, that presents a very huge opportunity. Over 3.2 million people live in rented premises across Nairobi, the big cities, and some of the smaller cities. So that's a huge number of people who are renting out premises. So if you're in development, property development, man, I'm telling you, the opportunity is very huge. And so today we're going to try and find how can you take advantage of this massive opportunity. So, as always, the Gigi Report is a platform for big, bold ideas, honest conversations, and we cover a broad range of subjects: socio-economic, philosophical, theological, and political, of course, as usual. So welcome to the show, and let's get rolling. Very good. I will begin by introducing our guest briefly. I'll give you his brief profile, and then after that I'm going to engage him to begin to tell us about himself and the other details. Okay, so our guest is Mr. Michael Waroe. Michael is a property development entrepreneur and a coffee farmer. That's good news for those of us who love coffee, with a vast experience. And so Michael is an ordained marketplace minister and a gospel ambassador. He likes to call himself ambassador of Christ. And so he's going to tell us more about that. And Michael earned his MBA from no other than the prestigious Wharton Business School in the US of A, way back in the 1990s, 94 actually. So I guess from then on he has accumulated a lot of experience. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you again. It's good to be here.
Very good. So let's get straight into the conversation. We'll begin by, although I've introduced you, so I'd like you to expound a little bit more. Tell us about your early years, your schooling, and how you ended up in the US, and then then also how you got into knowing Christ, your conversion, and entry into ministry.
Okay, well, thank you. Let me just start by saying that I am Michael Oroy, a minister of the gospel, not only functioning in the marketplace, but also within the four walls periodically.
Yes.
And fathering, quite a number of people within the body of Christ.
Right.
I'm married to one wife, Winfred Wanjama,
Right.
Waroy, and together we have 3 children.
Very good.
And yeah, so it's a pleasure to be here again.
Yes.
My early years, as you asked, were I was born here some 55 plus years ago in Nairobi.
Yes.
But at the age of 3, we left. My father worked in the diplomatic service.
Okay.
And so represented this country as Kenya's first resident ambassador both to the United Nations and to the United States. This was during the Nixon era, so to speak.
Oh, okay.
And so we spent 6 years there
Okay.
as he served the nation in those different capacities.
Okay.
We then returned back to Kenya, and I did my early primary schooling here, both in Hospital Hill, St. Mary's. Later went to Lenana School.
Right.
And during those years, that Lenana School was quite tough.
Yes.
So I'm alumni
Yes.
of the Lenana School.
Yes.
Thereafter, went to the UK, did my A-levels there. From when I went to Dartmouth College,
Okay.
which is an Ivy League school in the United States based out of New Hampshire.
Okay.
I was the 8th Kenyan to attend Dartmouth.
Okay.
We have others, George Warohio, who's a lawyer, who was the first, I believe. And we have the deputy director, one of the deputy directors for the IMF,
Okay.
who was my immediate predecessor, Sedo Ogada.
Okay.
But nowadays there are quite a number who have gone there.
All right.
Then came back and did, started my career in consulting. Used to work with Price Waterhouse
Okay.
when it was just Price Waterhouse, not PwC,
Yes.
on the consulting end.
Okay.
And then went to KWS, helped to set up that institution,
Okay.
which used to be the Wildlife Conservation and Management Department, but later was transformed to Kenya Wildlife Service.
Okay.
So I was quite part of the team that was used to really transform
Okay.
that small government department to the institution that it is today.
And it's very solid, actually.
It is very solid, struggling financially in some ways now with what's happening with the COVID-19 challenges,
Yes.
but that is happening all around the world.
Okay.
Because of my work and success there,
Yeah.
they sponsored my master's to the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania,
Okay.
and I did my degree there, my graduate studies, MBA
Okay.
in entrepreneurship
Yes.
and real estate development. So I did those 2 focus areas.
Okay. Okay.
I graduated from there in 1994.
Okay. Very good. Actually, that's interesting. Actually, about the MBA and the emphasis on property development and entrepreneurship. Yeah, that's good. That's good. And so, why did you choose those particular specialization?
Well, I think I've always been an entrepreneur. It runs through the family,
Okay.
particularly on my mother's side.
Okay.
And so I wanted to follow that line. I've always been interested in business.
Okay.
And equally on the real estate side, my father, I think is the one who started, or my grandmother really, many years ago was very interested in land and farmed the land and worked it and was very productive in that area.
Right.
And so real estate has always been something that I've been very interested in.
Okay.
And we had one of the top professors at the Wharton School, Professor Peter Lindemann, and that further increased my interest given the courses I took.
Okay. All right. I think that's very interesting, especially the reference to the professors at Wharton who inspired you. And the professor you talked about, he was a specialist in real estate or in entrepreneurship?
He was a specialist in the real estate side.
Oh, okay. So that was very inspiring.
It was, and I think part of the inspiration came because when we would make our presentations,
Yes.
Oftentimes he would invite people really who had practical hands-on experience in the business world.
Okay.
So we would, as students, present to people who had built major malls
Yes.
in the United States, for example.
Okay.
And they would be part of, the team would present too.
Yes.
And grade our coursework.
Okay.
So you get real practical hands-on experience by people who are proven.
Okay. Yeah, that was very, very foundational and very, very helpful. Excellent, excellent. I think then that so let's talk about your spiritual side. So at what point did you find the Lord and had this transformative experience and all that? Maybe you can tell us about that.
Sure. I found the Lord early on in life, around the age of 14.
Okay.
When I was in Lenana,
Okay.
and going through those challenging hazing or bullying experiences.
Okay.
It was one of these supernatural encounters.
Yes.
I received the Lord, was slayed in the spirit. I did not have that language.
Okay.
We were raised as Catholics by my mother.
Uh-huh.
And so that was something that was unusual.
Okay.
And I never told anyone about that experience for years because I was not able to reconcile it
Yes.
within my religious understanding of what, what these things meant. And so I remember having a conversation with the Lord, not like we're speaking now,
Yes.
but His spirit to my spirit,
Yeah.
and really getting a sense that He was calling me to the priesthood at that time, that very early age.
Okay.
But because of my, I think, religious mindset,
Yes.
I said, Lord, I'm too young. Maybe not now, but come back in my 30s, and that's exactly what happened.
Come back in my 30s.
The Lord is the Holy Spirit is a gentleman, and
Okay.
yeah.
He waited for
And
you.
He waited for me, yes. So I went straight back into the world, but I had received Christ at the young age of about 14, 15.
Okay, very good. And I think that what is amazing is the fact that when you find the Lord, when you have that moment of encounter with Christ, it will never leave you, and you can only deny it, and forsake that light, that gift, and that grace that is deposited in your spirit by when you open your mouth and confess Jesus as Lord.
So true. From that time, whatever anyone would say,
Yes.
I knew that God exists.
All right. Absolutely. Okay, very good. So, ladies and gentlemen, I believe you're following this conversation. Please, you're free to comment on the social media platform where you're watching us from, or the YouTube or Facebook. You're free to comment and just tell us what you think about this conversation. So now we want to go now to talk about the big stuff,
Okay.
the real estate property development. So I think you've laid a very nice foundation that you had this very wonderful education and training, and you met some very specialized guys in the property real estate development. So we could say, would you say that that particular professor was your greatest inspiration, or who else could have been your greatest inspiration? Other than your mom, you mentioned that your mom was a big inspiration.
My grandmother.
Your grandma.
Yes. Peter Lindemann, yes, was certainly one of the key inspirations.
Yes.
Because he, taught the technical aspects
Yes.
of real estate development. Mainly focused on the U.S., but a lot of the principles and the practices of real estate,
Yes.
I picked up from the Wharton School.
Okay.
A second inspiration is actually my father, who has been involved in real estate in a smaller way,
Yes.
but for a number of years.
Okay.
And I think the lesson that I've learned, from him, is not to do too much
Okay.
at the same time. I think there are many developers who have done too much at one particular point in time, and as a result, gotten themselves into some challenges. So I think his approach of conservatism is one that has spoken to me
Right.
quite strongly over the years. My grandmother, I mentioned her because I think that's where spiritually
Yes.
we got that interest in land. She was a peasant farmer, raised 12, 13 children. One died early on. All went to university, but went to university based on her productivity with the land.
Okay.
Didn't have much land, an acre or two,
Yeah.
but that land was extremely productive. We'd go and spend holidays with her, and she'd be there praising and worshiping the Lord as she dug the soil.
All right.
Was an intercessor of the Lord. And so that connection to the soil, I think, is what has opened up for successive generations that interest in not only land, but adding value to land.
Okay.
She added value to the land through agribusiness.
Yes.
My father through the real estate, and myself through the real estate.
Yeah.
But it's that principle of adding value
Yes.
to the land, I think came from her,
Okay.
Judith Nini.
Absolutely.
And then the other person is a friend of mine, actually, who passed on recently. But a young man my age, and he has done developments such as Greenhouse. I think you know that property on Gong Road. There are many other residential things he's done, Sunset Boulevard and Nathi River, for example, and probably eight or 10 others.
Okay.
But a young man, and he did this in conjunction with partners.
Yes.
Not a hint of scandal, and he is a good friend of 45 years, and he's also someone that I looked at closely within the context of the Kenyan real estate sector.
Okay. I think that's very, very, very good. Actually, I love that. The green, it's called Green Hub or something.
Greenhouse, yes.
The Greenhouse, the one on Gong Road.
That's right.
It's a fantastic property, actually.
Yes.
It's a fantastic property.
It is.
And now the dual carriage has been done. I think it's now even going to attract more value, on Gong Road. That's a good thing. Excellent. Now, I think there is something you've raised that I find very interesting. The conservative kind of like approach, what you picked up from your dad, the idea of not doing too much. Because I think that, and I would like you to, expound a little bit on that. Why I think it's important is because I think when people make money in the real estate sector, okay, well, the real estate sector itself is very attractive in terms of wealth building, or rather, it's famous. People get attracted to it. They hear very nice stories. You hear of somebody who's done a big block and they're doing so well. I mean, you look at their lives. One good project and their lives changed.
Right.
So a lot of people get attracted to that, and they jump in with that, like, I really got to do something. This is my breaking point, my breakout point, So talk about that conservative, kind of a paced, conservative approach to investing, and how that helps actually.
I think, before one gets into real estate, you really must make sure you have combined, if you're married, the collective skills to get into that business.
Right.
So, like I mentioned earlier, I think, or if I didn't, my wife is a commercial lawyer, runs her own law practice.
Okay.
And so those legal skills, came in handy within the context of our development. My background is one of business.
Right.
And so knowing how to capital raise and so on, knowing how to market and to sell. And so collectively, we come with the relevant skills to do, developments of that scale and nature. Our most recent development is Liza Heights,
Yes.
which
yes.
is a $4 million roughly development. So you need to make sure, one, that you have the skills in place before embarking really on this type of venture. Once you do, I mean, there is a process of putting the designs and the plans in place. The capital raising, part of it. Pre-selling the project if you can.
Exactly.
So that you're able to really convince the banks that you're able to sell and pay them back their money.
Yes. Exactly.
So there are lots of different bits and pieces within a project of the scale of the size that we're doing.
Okay.
And it's important, I would say, extremely important, to make sure you have the requisite skills in place. But even once you've done so, you're not doing multiple projects at the same time.
Okay. Okay.
You may in a good market, but sometimes you can never really predict the market.
Okay.
So who would have predicted the situation we have with the COVID-19?
Right.
I think no one could have predicted what we're seeing right now.
Okay. Let's talk about the Laser Heights, the property that you developed. How long ago was that?
Well, we broke ground on this particular project on the 4th of January 2016.
Okay.
And we did it in 2 separate phases.
Yeah.
The land is family owned.
Okay.
And so my mother had approached me to unlock the value of her land, which is in Odero, a place called Kino 87.
Yeah.
And so I agreed to do so. And so in exchange for the value of her land, we gave her apartments.
Okay. What's the configuration for the whole project?
We have 6 blocks of apartment units.
Yes.
And roughly 10 apartments per block.
Okay.
There are a total of 64 within the entire project.
Okay.
But I think what's exciting about it is that it's a kingdom project.
Right.
And you asked about the background in ministry. I actually began this project based on the word from the Lord. One of my spiritual sons, who's a prophet from Ethiopia, had seen me in a vision when she was praying, and said, Michael, I see you next to all these buildings. She didn't have any idea at the time that I was in business, but said, do you have a plan to build? Because the Lord is saying you should go ahead.
Okay.
And so on that basis, we had already done the plans, obviously, and we had a desire with my wife to enter this space, but that gave us the confidence to go ahead. And it's fortunate that we did get that word, because for the first 10 months, we'd knock on different banks' doors, possibly 6 or 7, and they would keep on saying no, 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 no.
Okay.
So oftentimes you can hear no, no, no before you get a yes.
Absolutely.
And but eventually, after 10 months, and you can imagine the intensity of that, where you haven't paid the contractor, you haven't paid your professional team for 8-9 months, and yet they're doing the work. So there was an enormous pressure, but throughout that there was peace, because we had a word from the Lord.
Okay.
The interesting thing is that October comes around, and we get to KCB and they say yes.
Okay.
And what's interesting is that it coincides with the capping of interest rates.
Okay.
So instead of borrowing at 24-25%,
right,
we're borrowing at 14%.
Okay.
And then a few weeks later, we get the fees from the National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA. They scrap their fees. The National Construction Authority scrap their fees.
Okay.
Saving us further funding. So the timing of God is really precise.
There's something you've mentioned that is very critical, and I want our viewers to pay attention to it. The timing bit, So you had this vision in your heart. You had discussed with your wife. There was clearly, having your background and knowing what you knew before, you felt that you needed to do, this kind of project, and it's like the timing bit, where at the point where you just you feel in your heart, now it's time to move. It then coincides with a number of very unique and unusual events which you had not anticipated. The capping of the interest rates, and then the National Construction Authority, scrapping of fees, and
then NEMA.
And NEMA. That's amazing. That must be a miracle.
We have an amazing God, I tell you, and that's not the whole story.
Right.
I would go into the foundations.
Yes.
Spend time in praying in the Spirit in the foundation.
Yes.
And we had roughly about 100 construction workers coming every day, so creating employment for many Kenyans. And they would look at who's this crazy developer who's in the foundation,
yes,
praying in tongues. And as the building went up, I would continue to do the same. So there's no single space, whether it's a toilet or a pantry, that has not been prayed for.
Okay.
We pray for the children that would be born there. We pray for the marriages that would be there. And typically, oftentimes, after finishing in prayer, I'd find a family just after coming in with the whole family and committing to purchase an apartment at Liza Heights. So all of phase 1 was sold, believe it or not, off literally off plan in a sense.
Yes. Yes.
Prior to completion.
Exactly.
And that's amazing for a real estate project. We haven't managed to replicate that in phase 2, but that was phase 1, our phase 1 experience.
Okay. There are opportunities in the real estate sector, but you have to be very, I will use the word strategic, in the sense of, well organized, well paced, well thought through approach, and you have a good, decent plan, and the location is right, and you've considered all the various elements, and then on top of that, God's hand in that project. So that, I think, is very, very important. So you have mentioned, for example, the idea that once you broke ground and you started, of course, you are in the market selling, aggressively selling.
Absolutely.
And people are coming in, and phase 1, as you described, was very successfully taken up.
Mm-hmm.
So how about phase 2? Did you have any challenge selling off the units in phase 2?
We've been having challenges, and I think given the the situation with the COVID-19, that suppressed demand.
Okay.
But again, we are fortunate that we didn't again bite off too much than we could chew.
Yes.
So had we done, for example, multiple projects,
Yes.
I think we'd be in a lot of trouble right now, as one or two real estate companies that you may have heard of are experiencing.
Okay.
So I think relative, we have rode the wave.
Right.
But we're looking forward to the point where we will sell all the units. I think we have about 12 of the 64 remaining.
Yes.
So that we can finalize, payments that we owe with the bank, with the contractor, with the different professionals.
Yes.
Not so much with the different professionals or too much with the contractor, but we still need to meet our obligations. And I think it's important as believers that we demonstrate that.
Okay.
That capacity to do that capacity to finish projects, not only finish them in the world's way, but we want Isaiah 2 verses 1 to 3 happening, where the world is coming to you and saying, teach us your ways.
Yes.
And not only do that if your ways are better than theirs.
Absolutely.
And that's been our experience at Liza Heights.
Absolutely. Okay, very good. Excellent, excellent. There you are. I think we've had what my brother Michael Waroi, did. The Liza Heights, a very, very interesting project that him and his wife, his family engaged in, and it's been very successful. And they are finalizing, the last few units to go. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I think one of the things Michael has said is the idea of being very careful and very conservative. Don't bite more than you can chew. And I think that's a message we all need to really ingrain, because the opportunity is huge, but then you need to be very careful how much you bite. Okay. So, Mr. Waroi, we're going to go into a break, and then when we come back, we're going to revisit some of the lessons,
Okay.
and the lessons that has come out of this whole project, what you've learned, and because we want our viewers to really understand
Absolutely.
how to pull off actually this kind of projects and leverage value in this very robust, attractive market. The need is so much, the demand is greater than supply. Of course, various classes, of course, and we're going to talk about that. Very good. So we go on a short break. We'll come back to this conversation. Don't go away. Stay tuned, and please remember to share with your friends. Okay, God bless you for now.
It's fresh. It's robust.
What is the difference between being a virgin and being sexually pure?
Virginity is a fruit of purity.
It's focused.
Jesus, lover of my soul. Jesus, I will never let you go.
And it all matters youth.
Yeah, there's still a future for us. It is never too late to pick up our lives again.
Next Gen Warriors Reloaded starting this Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Don't miss out.
Right, welcome back. This is the GG Report. As you can tell, we are having a very interesting conversation. Today we are talking about opportunities in the property development sector of our economy. And we are having a very serious conversation here. Michael is sharing with us his own personal experience and what they have been able to accomplish, in one of the big projects they have developed. And so we want to now look at some of the key lessons and how that is going. So, Mr. Waroi, before we went to the break, you were telling us how, for example, this project has gone. So you still have a few units, on offer, not done, not sold off in the phase 2.
By now, we certainly would have finished selling off what was remaining had it not been for the COVID, situation.
Okay.
I think the buyers have become a little bit more conservative and understandably so, because I think especially in 2020, they didn't know which way things were going, and I think there's a lot of uncertainty.
Right.
Not only in this nation, but across the world. And so people held on to their resources.
Okay.
But I think now that the situation is better understood, the things are beginning to pick up a little bit more.
Okay.
And for that, we are thankful.
All right. Very good. When you're designing a project, for example, and you're trying to position your product in the market, because I know the market it has different tires in terms of there are those who develop projects that are aimed at the very high end, 45 million and above, or 30, 40 million properties, and others who are within, say, like from 10 to 20 million, house or, apartments or whatever they are. And then those who target the between 5 million and 10 million, or 7 million to 10 million, which is a very popular kind of like sub-market, and those who are below what I guess the government is talking about, what do you call it, affordable. So give us a little bit of what goes on there. How do you decide which sector to focus on?
Okay, I think for us it was fairly simple because it was family land, like I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And this land was in Kino, which is an emerging sort of suburb area
Yeah.
of the country. And so oftentimes where you will price is dependent on the valuation of the land.
Okay.
So for example, if you were to buy an acre of land in the Kilimani or the Westlands region,
Yeah.
you'd be talking upwards of 300 million shillings an acre.
Yes.
Now that then has an impact on the pricing.
Okay.
But if you go a little bit further afield, then you're able to bring the pricing considerably down.
Okay.
So we were targeting the emerging middle class, and the starting point for a project like this is always a feasibility study.
Okay.
Seeing what else is out there in the market, and to what standard has it been done, and then of course as people who are kingdom, not Christian but kingdom, we certainly wanted to have our project speak of integrity, speak of professionalism, speak of excellence, far more than what we would see in the general locality. So if you go to any part of Odero, Kino, I'm sure our project stands out
Okay.
beyond those that exist. For example, we were the first developer to bring in a wastewater treatment system for a project of that size called the Jokaso. And it's a standard in Japan, so we brought it in and modified it for local use.
Okay.
And so all the waste, for example, that comes out of that particular project is taken through that system. And at the end, you can get water for gardening, the grass in the gardens. We have a children's playground area. We've incorporated the solar technologies, CCTV, and all that. We've gone a step ahead with water because there's a water issue in that vicinity where the water comes out with a darker coloration because of the excess manganese and so on within the water. And so beyond the borehole provision, we actually put in a water purification plant.
Oh, okay.
Which is another, major benefit, to the buyers there.
Okay.
So we went, I think, beyond and above, what was required.
Okay.
To really provide, something that would speak and testify, not necessarily to what Winnie and I are doing, but to God's capacity, really.
All right.
To drive this process, and His hand has been, majorly big as far as what we're doing at Liza Heights.
Okay, I love that. I love that. So and the market responded well, and I think that's a good thing. Yeah, you know.
The market has responded very well. Obviously, you know, you have to do the work.
Okay.
You know, faith without works is dead. And so we're always working. You know, just how Jesus said, you know, I'm always, you know, the Father is always working.
And I'm always working.
And I'm always working too.
Yes.
We're always working.
Okay.
And without the work, yes, you have to couple the faith with the work.
Okay.
And there's a lot of work involved in a project of this scale, as mentioned, you know, from, you know, the financing part of it to the design to the, you know, regular meetings just to assess, you know, where things are, to the incorporation of new technologies, to, you know, the actual sale process, to the legal agreements and the approvals that one, you know, have to take place.
Okay.
So there are many things that go on in a project of this size, and, you know, employing, you know, hundreds again of Kenyans.
Right. Okay. Anything unusual during the construction period or during the rollout of the project that was something that you had to wrestle with, you had to pray through, it was a major impediment to the success of the project, anything like that?
There are always challenges and always major unexpected challenges.
Absolutely.
I think the first one is one I spoke about, so I won't get into that, the financing part of it.
Yes.
But beyond that, you know, we were trying to get greater county involvement, for example.
Yes.
In terms of the adjacent infrastructure.
Yes.
And so I was lucky to meet with a very good member of County Assembly.
Yes.
Who helped us in that process, so, you know, to do the adjacent road, which was a contribution from the county to supplement what we ourselves had done. And I think that was a good, you know, partnership arrangement that enabled, you know, more value to come into the project. But, you know, we'll be looking at things in the future project like sewerage, proper sewerage in that area.
Yes.
We intend to break ground on our next project in Q4 of 2022.
Okay.
And so I'd want to see more active, you know, county engagement.
Okay.
Perhaps at a larger scale that would help us as developers, you know, move forward.
Okay.
I think what you know, government as well needs to look very closely at is the interest rate regime around you know, mortgage financing, for example. Right now it's too high, and so there are many Kenyans who would, you know, love to buy a home.
All right.
But the interest rates, really, the prevailing interest rate regime are too high.
Okay.
And so we find that perhaps there are 25,000 mortgages, you know, countrywide, which is a very, very small number given, you know, the numbers that you talked about earlier.
Yes.
Of the, you know, annual demand of 250 roughly, and as developers we're only putting 50,000 houses per year.
Yes.
I think it must have gone down actually even in this period of the last 18 months.
Yeah.
So I would say, you know, perhaps even below 40,000 homes per year.
Okay.
But if we can get that right, and also we would need a level playing field with the Chinese. Yeah, so whereas, you know, the Chinese are able to go to their government and borrow at, you know, whether it's 1-2%, and then come to Kenya and do some of these projects, I think that's unfair to local developers like ourselves. You know, government should always have a preference for Kenyan developers and the work that they're doing. And so we'd like to see, equity in that area as well, and I'm hoping, you know, that this will be seen by some of the policymakers.
Okay.
So that you know, we can have, you know, Kenyan developers having an edge even upon, you know, some of the international ones that are coming.
Okay.
The internationals could come and do, you know, the major roads, the bridges, and that sort of thing. But when you're talking about housing, surely I think that we should leave that to Kenyans.
Absolutely. And actually, I think this is the right place for us now to talk about the affordable housing.
Yes.
So there is a lot of buzz about affordable housing, and then the government has actually gotten into that space and investing so heavily, and of course, since it's public funds, you know, that are being used, for example, to get the projects underway. Although, of course, the properties are sold off to the public, and hopefully that the money is then plowed back into the subsequent project. What's your take about this affordable housing thing?
I think affordable housing is a great thing. I think it needs the execution is the key part. And so whereas we've talked about in the Big Four context, rolling out, I think, 500,000 homes every year. That hasn't happened.
Okay.
And it hasn't happened for a number of reasons, but largely around, the execution of that particular agenda.
Okay.
I think, there's a lot of land spaces around Nairobi, whether you're talking about, the Kariakor or Huruma, which are ripe for redevelopment.
Okay.
But again, one needs to, be actively engaged in ensuring a seamless execution of these projects.
Okay.
But if you can get your housing down to, below 5 million shillings per unit,
Yes.
then you really are in a place where if you do quality housing, there'll be significant uptake.
Okay.
At that particular price point. So anything below that is done to a quality, acceptable quality level, I think will be taken up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Recently, I read about the old history of places like the Jogoo Road corridor, the Kalodeni, the Makandara, and all those areas that were developed in the 50s. And some of them as early as in the 40s actually. And right now they're just a big sore part of this city. Do you think that the affordable housing perhaps could leverage that? They are so close to the city. These are areas that are so close to the city. Do you have any idea why maybe, or do you think the affordable housing projects will go into those areas? And do you think that?
I think there's some of those spaces where, especially where government owns the underlying land.
Yes.
So if government came to ourselves, for example, with a proposition, put up apartments in Kariakor, in places where the underlying land was owned by them, then we could very easily, get into a PPP arrangement.
Okay.
Where we would develop, based on, that the land that is under their ownership.
Yes.
Sell some units as a developer.
Yes.
Have some of the original, residents take up, better apartments, on terms that they agree. With the government and the developer. So I think it's possible to do a lot of these things that we were talking about, but the execution really is I think the major hurdle.
People in the private sector, we've seen a few projects that really were big, a lot of buzz about the projects, and they haven't taken off. Fantastic failures. Some of them are still like waiting to be completed, 10 years later or even more. What do you think has contributed to some of these fantastic failed projects? And are there some examples that you say, please don't do like these guys did?
Yeah, I think we've heard the stories in the market and some very recently. There's one developer, for example, who started out with really the best intentions.
Yes.
But went capital raising to a scale, I think to a scale of maybe 13 billion shillings in capital raising. I think they successfully concluded 2 projects. One in Karen that I went to see myself and I know of.
Yeah.
100 million houses, beautiful.
Wow. Wow.
100 million shilling houses, very, very beautiful. I think 10 of them. That was concluded. And the development somewhere in Ruaka, I think that was also concluded and occupied. But I think went to scale on too many. The issue that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Where one of our principles is conservatism, not doing too much at the same time, because if the market turns, as it did over the last 18 months, then you're in problems.
Right.
So I think no one could have anticipated COVID-19, and I believe this developer, went out with the best of intentions.
Yes.
But now is in trouble with those who invested in their particular company, and so there's a class action suit, I believe, that's in process.
Okay.
Which is very painful. No one wants to fail.
No one wants to fail.
No one wants to fail.
Okay.
So one has to, do the due diligence and the sufficient planning just to make sure that, in the event that the market turns in the way that it did,
yes,
you will still be able to
survive
and fulfill one's commitments.
Okay. what is the best model for financing given that circumstances could change? Is it the, I know there is a new model that has come into the market, and I would like you to comment on that, the REIT, Real Estate Investment Trusts, fund, the REIT instrument. Do you think that's where the problem is in terms of the funding model?
Well, I think the different funding models. One can go pure debt, one can go pure equity, which if you have the cash, I mean that would be ideal.
Yes.
It's always better to do things in cash where you have it than get entirely into debt. There's good debt where you're borrowing and you have a good sense of what the market will bear, and that you'll sell the units and pay back the banks, but oftentimes that's not the case. So I think the mainstream models involve a mix of debt and equity.
Okay.
Typically.
Right.
And the banks have a requirement for one to put in 30-40% of one's own equity before they extend their own resources.
Okay.
Which makes sense.
All right.
In terms of the real estate investment trust, I'm not very familiar with the legal structure. As it's been done in Kenya, but I believe it's a good model that has come on board, because with the real estate investment trust, you create this trust, you're able to do a project, and it has very positive implications on taxation.
Okay.
So you can do a project of scale within a REIT mechanism and structure things in a way that you pay nominal taxes.
Okay.
And so, I think it's something that we would be looking at in future, were we to engage in projects of a scale even larger than what we've done.
Okay.
Purely because it would make sense to have the right sort of structure. So I'd encourage that. I don't know whether they've resolved all the the bell and whistle issues they had with the rates.
Yes.
But it's something that I think I need to look more into.
There may be this one man of God, preacher man, who has a piece of land, and maybe he wants to do just 2 units and sell them off, okay? And maybe repeat that at a scale they can afford. What would you tell them they need to, to do? If somebody wanted to do, or maybe just build 1 unit at a time, you buy a piece of land, 40 by 80 or 50 by 100, put a 1 unit, sell it off to some of the, your friends, get that cash, put it in the next projects, stuff like that. There are people working it. Maybe, first of all, is there opportunity of that nature, and what would it require for somebody to do that, so that then they are beginning at the scale they can afford?
No, I'd definitely encourage that greatly for those who are looking that direction. I think the one thing that real estate does is that there's always the appreciation of what you've put onto the land.
Yes.
So you put up a building, that building is worth X, this year, but 5 years from now it's X plus something else.
Yes.
And so it holds the upside in terms of appreciation, but you also get the rental income streams from that.
All right.
So particularly for churches and ministers, Paul had his tent making activity, so to speak.
Yes.
And I think it's important as well for ministers to begin thinking about creative ways of tent making, so that as believers are being taught and equipped for works of service by the fivefold.
Yes.
Ephesians 4, I think it's 10 to 15.
Yeah.
The fivefold equipping the saints for works of service until they are mature.
Yes.
Oftentimes, there are enormous demands that are placed on them.
Yes.
But I believe that with proper investments that can sustain, church wineskins, let me put it that way.
Yes.
Then there'd be less pressure and less error in matters kingdom economics.
Okay.
So I definitely would encourage, and that was a model that my own father did.
Okay.
Putting a house, small house here initially. More, as he worked on, he was able to afford to do a little bit more from the savings that he made over, and this was over an extended period of time.
Okay.
Looking back, he's 88 now, almost. So he's been doing this for 50 plus years.
Wow, wow,
Yeah.
wow, amazing.
So that's a long time.
All
yeah.
right.
So it's good to be patient, and,
Yes.
and it's good to start, I think, where you're able to start.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we all can start somewhere. That's what you're actually saying. And we just need to pay attention to how we execute based on the capital we are able to raise. And you better, just do it within what you'd call your comfort.
Within your comfort zone, within your financial means.
Yes.
And bringing on the relevant expertise to guide you through the process.
Okay.
So your architects, you're talking to lots of people.
Okay.
Including those who have done what you're thinking about doing before.
Okay.
Is very helpful. But I'll definitely encourage the church to get into more of these things. We are the church after all.
Yes.
And if Babylon is to come to us for solutions to the world's most complex problems, then we'd better know that we carry those solutions.
Do you need to be someone special to make money in this country? Because a lot of people feel the systems are so bad, the government registration is so bad. Is the opportunity still there?
No, there's certainly room to improve our politics. We definitely need more leaders on board, less politicians, people who have the capacity to get some of these things done. Certainly that is required. Less negative ethnicity, less corruption. Those are the things that we talk about a lot of the times. There are opportunities. I'm hoping that within the next election cycle, which is just upon us.
Yeah.
We always seem to be in politics and election season. But I'm hoping that Kenyans will elect the right MCAs, governors, and all these different cadres of leadership.
Yes.
So that we can take this country to the next level.
What's the one thing you'd say is the most important lesson and inspiration? And I want you to look at that camera and speak to someone who is watching, who has a dream and would like to launch out. The words of encouragement and lesson, the key lesson that you'd say, hey, this is it. If you do this, you're going to make it.
Well, I'd say to the viewer watching, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all other things will be added unto you. I think, when you're engaging in any area in particular that you've been called to a particular jurisdiction, it's important to have the right relationship with your maker, with your creator, to seek his counsel and his guidance, so that you will hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk ye in it. And once you have the voice of God and a surety and a certainty around that, then I think you're able then to launch out with confidence. That said, faith without works is dead. Be prepared. Make sure you have the right skills in place, like I shared with Pastor Gigi. My wife and I, Winnie and I, didn't just get into real estate. We spent many years, in some of these schools, her studying law, practically, to get the skills that we needed to engage in the sector. So with that, I wish you, all the best, and may the Lord bless you. And thank you so much, Pastor Gigi, for coming home.
All right.
And taking the time to interview me.
Right. Very good. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for staying tuned. I believe you've learned a lot from my guest here. And you will take this lesson seriously and go out there and let the Lord lead you. And I believe that you can take advantage of the opportunities that are available. So that's all we had for you today on the Gigi Report. This is your host, Godfrey Gichuki, and thank you for staying tuned in. We'll see you another day, same place, same time, same channel, same TV. God bless you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.